Hi, and welcome to another short discussion where I chat to another great guest about different things related to me. I'm joined by a former professional footballer and owner of Football for Football, Julian Dowe. So welcome, Julian.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, yeah. What about yourself?
Excellent. Enjoying the rain today in Manchester, which is all good.
It's nice and sunny here in Newcastle.
Beautiful.
Never mind. So yeah, we're going to go on to chat about different transitions that professional footballers go through and how we can best support them. So to start with, why don't we look at when a professional footballer signs their first pro contract and then everything that goes with it? Do you want to just talk through your experiences and how we can best support them?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, obviously, my first contract was a good few years ago, and I think the dynamic hasn't changed, but the influences has. That first year pro contract, it's almost like an anomaly because you're striving all your young life to, people put this phrase, the golden ticket is a professional contract, sign pro, and you sign that pro contract, and some people take the foot off the gas, or some people push the foot down, but it is an area of uncertainty because you're a pro footballer by definition, by a piece of paper, as opposed to necessarily not much experience, or you might have the ability, but it's still putting that together. And generally, a pro contract year one is still to this day at 17 when it comes into effect. And most 17-year-olds are unsure of themselves as individuals, never mind as professional footballers. And I think that is one of the most uncertain periods, that 17 to 19 period for a young first year, second year pro. It's that you're a professional player. Now that expectation goes up because you're not on like a YTS or an apprenticeship or scholar contract, you're on a full-time professional contract. And that brings its own rewards as regards to monetary wise. Yeah, you now got more money than you had before. But then that expectation and that leniency that you had as an academy or scholar player has gone. And you now are treated different. You are looked at about being different. And unfortunately, sometimes negatively, these young pros can act different because, money is status, status is money, power, and it's all great, but they could be 1 year away from being released. Now, I've heard people have signed potentially, 3-year contracts at 17 and have been released at the end of the first year, paid up. So, yeah, well done, but the club wants that player out the door. And was that player a bad footballer? No, because they wouldn't have been offered a pro contract in the first place. But there's just certain elements that haven't fused that's enabled that ability to, manifest and become a professional footballer as opposed to just signing a professional contract. And you talk about what kind of support you can lend to that. Yeah, even myself, back in the day, you had senior pros that you could speak to. There wasn't that social noise that was creating all the problems like on social media, the skewed media, sort of perception. And this is why the dynamic of speaking up has gone. Young players are seeking advice or sort of like validation, away from football clubs in their peer groups or again, within perception of social. And that's why, again, leading to what you do, as much as players will pay to have a personal trainer on the physical side, they need to get a personal trainer on the mental and psychological side as well.
I suppose now, like, clubs are employing sports psychologists, aren't they, and counsellors and different people more and more often. So that is there for them. Whether they actually utilize the sports psychologists in that way is another thing.
Yeah,
but as you say, the importance of the team around them is vital.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things to add to that, David, is as much as the club do well and they do try and provide these services, but if it's in-house, it becomes generic. And I think we've had a conversation previously where there's too much inter-referencing. What's he doing with him? What's he said to him? Where if you go externally and it's away from the club, then it becomes a bit more personable. And also, I think the clinician or the practitioner can offer a better service because it'll be more open and free as opposed to the player feeling they're in the confines of the club. And who is the specialist working for, the club or me? And it'll take a very strong person. And again, I'm not questioning, your self integrity. I know from speaking to you that if you were brought in by a club, you would deliver that personal service, and you have made those points clear to the club that you're dealing with the player, and the player, first and foremost and end of. But I just still think, players can start looking outside and trying to address these things for themselves, because the great thing is, if you've got a specialist within a club, if you move clubs, then if you've built that relationship and they've got an understanding of you, it'll be quite hard to cement that if you've been up in there, for instance, and down there with the club. But as a individual, that you can, whether you like it or not, the players they earn quite good money. Paying for external services wouldn't be a big thing, if it's going to benefit them. So I think that they should do that for themselves, the same way they do for a massage, a nutritionist, a home chef. If they've got something that they can trust and build on, I think that will ultimately, give them a more fulfilling career.
You had a key word there as well with trust. Naturally, whether they are a nutritionist, a personal trainer, whoever it is, you've got to have that trust. Otherwise, the relationship's going to fall down, and you're not going to be able to make the changes that you want to.
Yeah, and the trust is a two-way thing, and it has to be earned. And, whether we like it or not, the service provider has to earn it in the first and foremost. They've got to prove that, they are trustworthy. But I think that trust can also be validated and cemented by the results that you can potentially give to a player, because you need to produce quickly. And I know it's not a light switch moment, like a player could come and see you Monday and then Tuesday they've scored a hat-trick and the world's a great place. It is a gradual process, but they must understand. And I think, again, from hearing what you spoke about before and how you apply yourself, that trust can be built up over that period of time, that you can deliver those results, and it will effectively look like a light switch moment. And, the crazy thing is, a change of environment, a different pair of boots, just little triggers that will give you that sense of difference and a new start point and a reference point in order to progress.
You bang on there. So in today's culture, we all want things like now, don't we? Everywhere you go, I suppose internet connections are getting faster and faster, but maybe not ours right now on occasions. But yeah, players do want change in a session, in 2 sessions, which, it makes it tough for someone like myself. The pressure's on, but we've got to look at the options we've got available to help them. Totally.
And I think, as we mentioned before, as much as the player, the player being within football and the football being within society, and the culture is everyone self, immediate gratification. They want immediate validation. They want immediate benefits. And, what I would say to a player when they're talking about, especially engagement with somebody like yourself, it's the same way as if they've been told that they are not strong on the ball. You need to get into the gym. So they're told that on the Monday, they go to the gym on the Tuesday, they're not all of a sudden going to be strong on the Wednesday. But the process has started. The principles are putting in place for them to build on. And that's the same way as if it was, with the psychological or, mental or peak performance approach, that it's not going to be day one. It's going to be day one start. And then as long as you can plot the end point, and the end point won't necessarily be a timeline, it will be a point of validation. It will be the outcome, as opposed to day one. It's going to be, the outcome going to be, I will now be able to do this, or I will be able to reference that. And that can happen after a week, it can happen after a month, it can happen, it could be a year. But as long as the outcome's achieved and everybody's understanding of what they're building towards, and that would be the key thing that the players must understand. It's not going to be Monday bad, Tuesday great. Monday start and see where it takes us.
Yeah. Certainly, if you look at confidence, I'm always looking at like the key ingredients of how I can help somebody get from A to B. And as they say, it's all about the process and making sure that they've got regular things that they're going to do on a day-to-day basis, so they can take control of the whole situation.
And yeah, totally. And I think, as you said there, we talked about the word trust. That confidence comes with benefits and results. But like you said, they've got to trust you to understand that in the first instance, those benefits and progress is not going to be made immediately. So they've got to trust the process. They've got to trust the practitioner. And that's the key thing. And that's where you've got to work. If it's within a club, it's probably going to be a bit harder, because you're in that club environment and they don't know what's coming back, or in their mind, even though it wouldn't do, they still need to feel comfortable with that. And if it's away from the club, then maybe that process could be accelerated or could be a lot more effective and used more efficiently.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I've worked in clubs and out of clubs, and I currently am now. And you want to try and get the coaches on side in order so you can then get your messages across to the players, and you want to be able to spend for you. But then you don't want to be seen to get too close to the coach, otherwise the players is questioning you, like you say, that whole trust element. So it is it's quite a tricky position to be in at times.
Absolutely, and I think the club coaches, the technical or tactical coaches, also must be sympathetic or understanding of what you're trying to achieve, and what you're trying to achieve is for that player to overcome certain things or be better. So as long as everybody's understanding and can fit into that ecosystem at the required level, then that should be the driver. But again, it's like you said, you need to get information off coaches. You need to feed back to coaches on certain elements of progress or what you're going to be putting into play. Because, like you said, it's if this player's having a bad time, whether it be confidence or he's not doing something right, again, you go back to playing football. If you're on a pitch and you make a mistake, the first thing you do, you look over to the bench. And if your gaffer's going, now there's that, or there's, hey, come on, keep, the same, his players made the same mistake, but those two actions will determine what the next phase will be. And that's where the power of the non-verbal communication, the understanding of what we're trying to achieve for the player, what is the desired outcome, they're little things that can, make people, come on or.
Yeah, I suppose what you're talking about there as well, I'm thinking about my role there, is where as a sports psychologist, you can actually help coaches understand some of the traps that they fall into, some of the daft things that comes out of their mouth that puts a player down, to, like you say, the non-verbal, the body language. I'm just intrigued, just looking at time there. We've only got a few minutes left there. A lot of players, including yourself, move around clubs quite a lot. How difficult can it be to settle into some dressing rooms? Did you catch that? Have we got a technical difficulty here?
Are we back?
We're back, yeah. So I'll repeat the question.
Go on.
So the question was basically about transfers, and you, like a lot of players, moved around quite a lot of clubs. Do you want to talk about your experiences about different dressing rooms and how they changed, and how some will have been difficult? I'm sure some will have been easier to settle into.
Yeah, I think it comes with status, and it becomes with where that club is. If you're coming in as a money signing or a marquee signing, you're afforded a little bit more tolerance as regards to settling in, i.e., because the manager needs to make it work, the club needs to make it work. If you're coming in on a bit of parity and it's just a like for like, then you've got to prove you're better than what's been replaced. And they could be somebody's friend, it could be a teammate. So you might not be afforded as many, tolerances. And the dressing rooms are notoriously hard. And this is one of the things, especially with football, what we're trying to do for the younger players is to expose them to things like you talk about, that mental resilience, the strength of going into a dressing room. It's not a particularly nice place initially, because everybody's, especially at the smaller clubs where there's very limited budgets. So you've got to appreciate that, it's going to be hard. But if the player has gone in with the right mindset, and I use this right mindset, and I'm using it very flippantly, why have you gone to that club? Why have you been brought in? What are you hoping to achieve? What have you got in order to be into that club? What are your attributes? If you deliver in those, you do fit in. The better you are, the easier it is. I know it sounds quite cliche, and you just said, just go and play well. But that's the driver. So it's not about trying to fit in and join in groups and make sure everything I'm right with him and he's being okay with me and what's he looking at me for. If you're doing your job, that's the big thing. I remember a great story, obviously up in Newcastle, David Ginola, when he signs for Newcastle. and Beresford is playing on the, fullback, and his mate Scott Sellers, and he goes, Scotty, listen, don't worry, I'll sort this lad out. You stay here, no problem. And he fired a ball into Ginola. I mean, absolutely smashed it into him, and he just pirouetted, touched, and went past the guy. And Beresford looked at Sellers and said, "Mate, you're absolutely." So there you go. That was in. So we are gonna, ruffle up this foreign player. We're gonna see if he settles in. I'm gonna give him that, and also he dealt with it because he's got the ability. Ginola's got the confidence. This is what I'm made for. Bang! All of a sudden, Ginola's our guy, and that's how fickle a dressing room is. You can go from hero to zero, and vice versa in a training session, in a game. So fitting into a dressing room is something that can be done, that you can determine by your own self being and being a player, and it's having that football identity. You might not be a very charismatic person, you might not be a particularly intellectually intelligent person, you might not be funny, you might be quiet, you might be overt, you might be gregarious, you might be, but if your football's doing what it's supposed to do, you'll be a lot more accepted and accommodated.
Yeah, and you're going to be thrust into situations where you are going to have to stand your ground and assert yourself the way you're talking there. You're going to come across that type of situation, be criticised and blamed for different things.
Yeah, football's a blame culture, and the dressing room is an easy to poke at the new person, or it's easy to poke at the expensive one, especially if you've got a successful dressing room. If you've got an expensive dressing room, an established dressing room that's successful, as United, for instance, I've heard stories where players have come in, they've had a bad touch, and the ones who've been there have come through. They look at the player, how much, and that's just to test that somebody's metal. That's to test somebody's metal. And when I say, and again, there's two schools of thought, because you hear people on the outside sometimes saying the player shouldn't have to go through this. There should be this and it should be that. But they go out on a pitch and there's 40,000, 50,000 begging for blood, calling all sorts of names, and as much as to say the players sometimes can ignore it, when they're static, or when there's breaks in play, or when there's a mistake, having somebody to say your first touch is terrible in the dressing room, as opposed to 50,000 saying you're rubbish, waste of money. That's what you got to be able to compound. So yeah, there will be challenges. You have to stand your ground. But as again, I go back to the playing side, playing the game, playing to the best of your ability, that silences conversations, or it starts conversations for you. You're able to do that, and I don't mean it in a very, very flippant way, because I'm making it sound very light, because even sometimes I suffered from it as well. When I've gone into dressing rooms and you're trying to be people's mates, you're trying to fit in, and you might pass the ball where you would have normally scored yourself, just to try and make, and then if that breaks down, that pass has broken down, and you've not done this, and then it's doubly compounded. So you're not showing your attributes, and you're trying to pander to other people's. Do what you're good at, do it effectively, do it confidently, and generally you will progress and move forward.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I could talk for hours about this quite easily, but we're going to have to wrap up. You've certainly highlighted plenty of things to think about. If I know there's any people from my profession watching this, they'll have certainly picked up some good little pointers there. So again, I appreciate your time, Julian. I know you're doing some great stuff with your Football for Football website, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more good stuff coming out as well in the near future.
Oh no, I appreciate that, and likewise the other way around. Hopefully, some players will appreciate that the expense it is relative to getting external help. It could be just, even if it's going well, still do that, because what it does, it allows them to document and create, sort of like habits and mindset that they'll say, right, okay, you've done that well, and that'll help me move forward as well. So I want players to be open and start looking for external help where it's required.
Yeah, I agree there. Key habits on a day-to-day basis is certainly the way forward. And so, yeah, appreciate your time. Thanks very much, Julian.
David, thank you very much. Take care.